rising today. No limits, no fear. Hustling hard, we're here.
All right, let's dive in. Today we're going to take a deep breath and really get into what's in the air we breathe.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Right, something we kind of take for granted, like air is air.
Yeah, it's just there.
But when I started looking at this website, Indoor Air Assessment, it's pretty wild.
Oh, what did you find?
So much stuff we don't even think about just floating around in our homes and offices. It's a bit alarming.
I can imagine. I mean, we can't see it, so it's easy to forget about.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack some of those hidden dangers. We'll figure out why good air quality is so important. And of course, for our listeners who are all about learning new things, there's going to be a lot to discover.
I'm ready to break it all down.
Awesome. So first off, I got to say their tagline grabbed me. We care about your air. Simple, but it says a lot, right? Like people are starting to realize clean air really matters.
Absolutely. I think for a long time we've been focused on outdoor pollution, smog, car exhaust, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what we're breathing inside can be even worse, and that can seriously affect our health.
They actually list a bunch of pollutants on the site. Mold, bacteria, allergens, even things like VOCs and formaldehyde. That's pretty intense.
It is, and a lot of people don't even realize these things are in their homes.
So let's break it down. What's the deal with mold? It's gross? Sure. But is it really dangerous?
It's definitely more than just an eyesore. Certain types of mold can release toxins into the air.
Oh, wow.
And those toxins, they can wreak havoc on your respiratory system, especially for people with allergies or asthma.
Yikes. Okay, what about bacteria? They mentioned some scary ones. Salmonella, E. coli.
Yeah, those are no joke. Bacteria can contaminate surfaces, even get into the air. You could be breathing it in without knowing it. And if it gets into your system, let's just say you don't want that.
Definitely not. And then there are allergens. We know about dust mites and pet dander, but they also mention mice allergens? Wait, really?
Mice allergens are actually pretty common, especially in older homes or places where mice might have been, even if you don't see them now.
Makes you think, huh?
Right. And just like other allergens, they can trigger respiratory problems, allergic reactions. It can be tough to breathe comfortably.
So it's like this whole invisible world affecting how we feel. Okay, now, VOCs, volatile organic compounds. That sounds like a chemistry textbook.
Aha, it does. But think of them as chemicals that have evaporated into the air. Things like paint, furniture, cleaning products, even building materials can release VOCs.
Really? Everyday stuff.
Yep. And the problem is, some VOCs can have long-term health effects if you're exposed to them regularly.
That's kind of unsettling. And then there's formaldehyde. I always think of that new furniture smell. Is that a bad thing?
Well, that new smell could be formaldehyde off-gassing. It's used in tons of building materials and household products. Short-term exposure, probably not a huge deal, but long-term exposure has been linked to some health concerns.
It's amazing how many potential pollutants are just hanging out in our homes. I mean, how do we even know what we're breathing? Thankfully, Indoor Air Assessment does different levels of testing. Basic, standard, advanced.
It's like choosing a level of detail on a map. A basic assessment gives you a general overview, while a more advanced assessment provides much more specific details.
So different levels of zooming in on the air quality. Makes sense. Now, they mentioned specific tests too. ERMI, mycotoxins. What are those all about?
So ERMI stands for Environmental Relative Moldiness Index. Basically, it's like a DNA test for mold.
Whoa, really?
Yep, it identifies and quantifies the types of mold present. Way more precise than just knowing if there's mold.
So it's not just about like mold, yes or no. It's about knowing which kind and how much.
Wow.
They also emphasize benchmark testing using standards from EPA, ASHRAE, Fitwel, Alphabet Soup.
Right. Those are all organizations that set standards for indoor air quality. Think of them like guidelines for what's considered healthy and safe.
So indoor air assessment is making sure their analysis matches up with those standards.
Exactly. Gives you more confidence in their findings. They're using a reliable system.
Makes sense. They also have this how it works section. Pretty straightforward. You schedule the assessment, technicians come out to test, samples go to a lab, then you have a follow-up. Seems simple enough, right?
It does, and they make it sound really user-friendly, which is great.
So, like, during the assessment, what happens? Do they just, like, wave a magic wand and detect bad air?
Haha, not quite. A technician comes out and collects air samples, surface samples, depending on the level of testing you choose. They might use special equipment to measure things like temperature, humidity, even the concentration of tiny particles in the air.
So it's not just like a sniff test.
No, it's much more scientific than that. It's about gathering real data.
And then the lab work, what's that like? To the samples, did you like sit in a petri dish?
More than that, they analyze the samples for different pollutants using pretty high-tech methods. Mold samples might be cultured to identify the exact types. Air samples could be analyzed for the concentration of various gases and particles.
That's pretty amazing. So this lab work is what tells them exactly what's in the air.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there's the follow-up. Why is that so important?
Because that's when you actually get to understand the results. A good report won't just be a bunch of numbers and jargon. It'll explain what those numbers mean, identify potential sources of pollutants, and offer recommendations for making things better.
So it's not just, here's what we found, it's here's what to do about it.
That's the goal. It's about giving you actionable information, empowering you to improve your air quality.
Okay, let's talk money. Indoor air assessment has a few different packages. Basic air assessment starts at $325. Packages with mold testing, you can add extra rooms, extra tests. Seems pretty flexible.
It is, and it makes sense to offer different options. Not everyone needs the same level of detail.
Right? And they provide sample reports you can download so you can see exactly what you're getting.
Transparency, I love that. Builds trust.
Totally. And speaking of trust, they have a whole section of testimonials from past clients.
Always good to see what other people are saying.
One client says, Dave is a brilliant resource in mold testing. He assisted me with detailed explanations to the point that I can now competently service my clientele. That's a pretty glowing review, especially coming from another professional.
That's awesome. It really shows that they're not just about testing. They're about educating and empowering people.
Another client mentions the fast turnaround time for reports, which is always nice. And there's a real theme of personalized service, like they actually care about their clients.
That's so important. When it comes to something as essential as air quality, you want to know you're working with someone who's knowledgeable and truly invested in helping you.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fascinating. It's incredible how much we don't realize about what we're breathing every day.
It really is. But the good news is we can do something about it.
And that's what we're going to talk about next. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into indoor air assessment, where we'll explore some practical tips for improving your indoor air quality and creating a healthier breathing space for you and your loved ones.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of indoor air quality. Still with me as we explore indoor air assessment.
Wouldn't it miss it?
We've learned a lot about those hidden pollutants lurking in our homes. Makes you think twice about taking a deep breath, huh?
Right. But knowledge is power. Now we know what to look for.
Exactly. So I'm curious, from your experience, how has awareness of this whole indoor air quality thing changed over time? Seems like it's become a bigger deal recently.
Oh, definitely. Huge shift. Used to be, people mostly thought about outdoor pollution, smog, car exhaust, all that.
Yeah, the visible stuff.
Exactly. But now there's this growing understanding that what's inside our homes and offices can be just as important, if not more so.
Makes sense when you think about how much time we spend indoors these days.
Right. And this website, with all its focus on testing and analysis, it really reflects that shift. It's not just about noticing a funky smell anymore. It's about getting scientific about it.
It's true. I mean, indoor air assessment really seems to be on top of it. Like, their whole how it works section, it's so clear and straightforward.
Yeah, they break it down nicely. Step-by-step process for assessment and remediation.
It's like, okay, I can handle this. Not nearly as intimidating as I thought it would be.
Right, and that's so important. They're taking something that could be really confusing and making it accessible.
Especially that follow-up consultation they mentioned. Getting the data is one thing, but then figuring out what it means, what to do next, that can be overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where their expertise really comes in. They don't just hand you a report and say, good luck.
Right. They actually help you make sense of it all.
Exactly. They explain the findings, answer your questions, and work with you to create a plan.
That's reassuring. Like having an air quality coach in your corner.
I like that analogy. It really emphasizes the importance of having a trusted guide in this process. And speaking of the report, I was impressed by the level of detail they provide in those sample reports on the website.
Me too. They cover everything.
Seriously, from the types of pollutants found, to their potential health effects, to specific recommendations for remediation, they don't hold back.
And it's all presented in a way that's easy to understand. They don't get too technical and jargony.
Right. They use clear language, visuals, even practical tips, so you're not just left scratching your head wondering, okay, now what?
Exactly. They give you concrete steps you can take. Speaking of which, those client testimonials on the website, they really stood out to me.
Yeah, they're pretty compelling. You can tell they've built a solid reputation, lots of trust and positive feedback.
One testimonial that caught my eye was from Jeff A. He's with Epoch Environmental Decon. He said, Dave is a brilliant resource in mold testing. He assisted me with detailed explanations to the point that I can now competently service my clientele.
That's high praise, especially coming from another professional in the field.
Right. Clearly, Dave knows his stuff. And it sounds like he's really passionate about sharing his knowledge with others.
Absolutely. And that passion shines through on the whole website, from the detailed explanations to the transparent pricing to that focus on the customer satisfaction. They're not just going through the motions. They genuinely want to help people.
It's refreshing to see. It feels like their mission is to demystify this whole indoor air quality world and make it accessible to everyone.
And that's a mission I can definitely get behind.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problems. Now let's get to the solutions. What can we actually do to improve the air we breathe inside? We can't all become air quality experts overnight.
Right, but the good news is you don't have to. There are some really simple things you can do to make a big difference.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's like the number one things people should focus on?
Ventilation.
Ventilation, like just opening the windows.
Exactly. It sounds basic, but it's super effective. Open those windows regularly, especially after cleaning or using products that have fumes.
I do that sometimes, but I guess I should do it more often. Gets that fresh air circulating, right?
Yep. Helps flush out those pollutants. And speaking of flushing out, remember how we talked about humidity? Indoor air assessment really emphasizes controlling that.
Right, because of mold. Too much humidity and you're practically inviting mold to move in.
Exactly. Keeping humidity levels below 50% makes it way harder for mold to grow.
Okay, so how do we actually control humidity? Dehumidifiers.
Those can be helpful, especially in basements or damp areas, but also simple things like running the exhaust fan in the bathroom after you shower, making sure your dryer vents properly.
Right, everyday habits make a difference. What about those VOCs? Any tips for minimizing exposure to those?
One big one is choosing low VOC or no VOC products whenever possible. Paints, cleaning supplies, furniture, a lot of stuff is labeled that way now.
So it's about being more conscious of what we're bringing into our homes.
Exactly.
I've also heard that some houseplants can help purify the air. Is that true?
It is. Certain plants act like natural air filters, absorbing some of those pollutants.
Wow, so they not only look nice, they actually do something. Which plants are we talking about?
Spider plants, snake plants, peace lilies, ZZ plants, those are all good ones.
Good to know. Okay, for listeners who are thinking about getting their air quality tested, what advice would you give them? What should they keep in mind?
The most important thing is to choose a reputable company, one that uses accredited labs, follows industry standards. You want accurate, reliable results.
So do your research. Don't just go with the cheapest option.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask questions. A good company will be happy to talk you through their process, their experience, their qualifications.
Makes sense. So be informed.
Exactly. And think about your specific concerns. Are you worried about mold, allergens, VOCs? That'll help you decide what kind of assessment you need.
So go in with a clear idea of what you're looking for. And I guess prepare your home a bit before the assessment, right? Like tidy up.
It definitely helps. Declutter, vacuum, avoid using any strong-smelling products a few days before the test. It'll help ensure the results are as accurate as possible.
Great advice. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of indoor air quality. It's amazing how much we learn from just one website, Indoor Air Assessment.
Right. It's a treasure trove of information. And hopefully our listeners are feeling empowered to take control of their air quality and create healthier homes for themselves and their families.
Absolutely. So to wrap it all up, what's the one key message you want everyone to take away from this deep dive?
That we have more power over our indoor air quality than we think. By being aware of potential pollutants, making informed choices, and taking those simple steps we talked about, we can all breathe easier and live healthier lives.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration.
Big moves, bold plays, local legends rising today. No